Children's Performing Arts Radio Players and our sponsor, Onkona Title, present Onkona Title Radio Show, a reimagined reenactment of Orson Welles' 1938 radio play telling the classic tale of the War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells.
And now a word from one of our generous sponsors.
Dependable and helpful, Onkona Title.
When you're purchasing or refinancing a home or business, Onkona Title can help you every step of the way with their dependable, customer-focused approach that puts everyone at ease.
Learn more or get a quote at onconatitle.com. That's ANCONA title.com.
Dependable and helpful, Onkona Title.
Ladies and gentlemen, first act made possible in part by White Bear Area Historical Society.
White Bear Lake Area Historical Society, 50th anniversary, we save history.
White Bear Lake Area Historical Society, maintaining our heritage and preserving our area's history for 50 years.
Join in the 50th anniversary celebration this September. Online only, September 25th through September 27th. Get your tickets today at whitebearhistory.org.
White Bear Lake Area Historical Society, 50th anniversary, we save history.
And now, the Onkona Title radio show featuring the Children's Performing Arts Radio Players.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligence greater than man, and yet as mortal as his own.
We know now that as human beings busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth, about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Yet across an immense ethereal gulf, minds that to our minds as ours are to the beasts in the jungle, intellects vast, cool, and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes, and slowly and surely drew their plans against us.
In the 38th year of the 20th century came the Great Disillusionment.
It was near the end of October. Business was better. The war scare was over. More men were back at work. Sales were picking up. On this particular evening, October 30th, the Crossley service estimated that 32 million people were listening on radios.
For the next 24 hours, not much change in temperature. A slight atmospheric disturbance of undetermined origin is reported over Nova Scotia, causing a low-pressure area to move down rather rapidly over the northeastern states, bringing a forecast of rain accompanied by winds of light gale force. Maximum temperature, 66. Minimum, 48. This weather report comes to you by the Government Weather Bureau. And now, a word from our sponsors.
KV & Company. For all your real estate needs, contact your trusted real estate professional, Guy Carth, with KV & Company at 612-418-9151.
And Fraser Automotives. If you want to be treated like family, come and see us at downtown White Bear Lake. We do all general repairs on automotives. Fraser Automotives.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight is a special treat. We will take you across the country to hear two great sounds. One from New York in the Hotel Martinet in Brooklyn, where we will hear Bobby Millett and his orchestra, and from Rudy's Rooftop in beautiful downtown White Bear Lake, Minnesota. We welcome you now to Minnesota and to lovely sounds from Wally and the Polka Boys.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program Dance Music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At 20 minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Fail of the Mount Jennings Observatory, Chicago, Illinois, reports observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The spectroscope indicates the gas to be hydrogen and moving towards the Earth with enormous velocity. Professor Pearson of the observatory at Princeton confirms Farrell's observation and describes the phenomenon as, quote, like a jet of blue flame shot from a gun, unquote. We now return to Hotel Martinet in Brooklyn to Bobby Millett and his orchestra.
And now back to Minnesota and a tune that never loses favor, ever popular Stardust by Wally and the Polka Boys.
But first, a word from our sponsors.
This program was brought to you by Moonlight Menagerie, hand-poured soy candles made in Minnesota. Visit us at moonlightmenagerie.com.
And by the Peterson family, North Nutrition, and Diane Urbanski.
We would like to give a big thank you to Jennifer Grimm for sharing her wisdom and insight during our jingle creation process. We were so honored to have such a talented local artist to work with us. Check out her music from Christmas to jazz, along with her other works at jennifergrimm.com. That's Grimm with 2 M's. jennifergrimm.com. And we would like to give a special thank you for the shout out from the Pugh family.
Ladies and gentlemen, following on the news given in our bulletin a moment ago, the Government Meteorological Bureau has requested the large observatories of the country to keep an astronomical watch on any further disturbances occurring on the planet Mars. Due to the unusual nature of this occurrence, we have arranged an interview with noted astronomer Professor Pearson, who will give us her views on the event. In a few moments, we will take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, New Jersey. Until then, we return you to the music of Wally and the Polka Boys.
We are now ready to take you to the Princeton Observatory, where Carla Phillips and Kent Clarkson will interview Professor Dorothy Pearson, a famous astronomer. We now take you to Princeton, New Jersey.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Kent Clarkston, along with Carla Phillips, speaking to you from the observatory at Princeton. I am standing in a large, semicircular room, pitch black except for an oblong split in the ceiling. Through this opening, I can see a sprinkling of stars that cast a kind of frosty glow over the intricate mechanism of the huge telescope. The ticking sound you hear is the vibration of the clockwork. Professor Pearson stands directly above me on a small platform, peering through a giant lens. I ask you to be patient, ladies and gentlemen, during any delay that may arise during our interview. Besides her ceaseless watch of the heavens, Professor Pearson may be interrupted by telephone or other communications. During this period, she is in constant touch with the astronomical centers of the world. Oh, there's the professor's assistant, Martina Fernandez. May I ask you a few questions?
At any time, Mr. Clarkson.
Miss Fernandez, would you please tell our radio audience exactly what you see as you observe the planet Mars through your telescope?
Nothing unusual at the moment, Mr. Phillips. A red disk swimming in a blue sea, transverse stripes across the disk. Quite distinct now because Mars happens to be the point nearest the Earth. In opposition, as we call it. If you'll excuse me.
In your opinion, what do these transverse stripes signify, Professor Pearson?
Not canals, I can assure you, Mr. Clarkston, although that's the popular conjecture of those who imagine Mars to be inhabited. From a scientific viewpoint, the stripes are merely the result of atmospheric conditions peculiar to the planet.
Then you're quite convinced, as a scientist, that living intelligence as we know it does not exist on Mars?
I'd say the chances against it are 1,000 to 1.
And yet, how do you account for those gas eruptions occurring on the surface of the planet at regular intervals?
I cannot account for it. Excuse me, Mr. Clarkston.
Yes, thank you, Professor. By the way, Miss Fernandez, for the benefit of our listeners, how far is Mars from Earth?
Approximately 40 million miles.
Well, that seems a safe enough distance.
Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Someone has handed Professor Pearson a message. While she reads it, let me remind you that you are speaking from the observatory at Princeton, New Jersey, where we are interviewing the world-famous astronomer, Professor Pearson. One moment, please. Professor Pearson has passed me a message, which she has just received. Professor, may I read the message to our listening audience?
Certainly, Miss Phillips.
Ladies and gentlemen, I shall read you a wire addressed to Professor Pearson from Dr. Gray of the National History Museum, New York, 9:15 Eastern Standard Time. Seismograph registered a shock of almost earthquake intensity occurring within a radius of 20 miles of Princeton. Please investigate. Signed, Lord Gray, Chief of Astronomical Division. Professor, could this occurrence possibly have something to do with the disturbance observed on planet Mars?
Hardly, Miss Phillips. This is probably a meteorite of unusual size, and its arrival at this particular time is merely a coincidence. However, we shall conduct a search as soon as daylight permits.
Thank you, Professor.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the past 10 minutes, we've been speaking to you from the observatory at Princeton. bringing you a special interview with noted astronomer Professor Pearson and her assistant. This is Kent Clarkston, along with Carla Phillips. We are returning you now to our New York studio.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. Toronto, Canada. Professor Morse of McGill University reports observing a total of 3 explosions on the planet Mars between the hours of 7:45 p.m. and 9:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This confirms earlier reports received from American observatories.
Now, near home comes a special announcement from Trenton, New Jersey. It is reported that at 8:50 p.m., a huge, flaming object believed to be a meteorite fell on a farm in the neighborhood of Grover's Mill, New Jersey, 22 miles from Trenton. The flash in the sky was visible within a radius of 700 miles, and the noise of the impact was heard as far north as Elizabeth.
We have dispatched a special mobile unit to the scene, and we'll have our commentators Carla Phillips and Kent Clarkson give you a word description as soon as they can reach there from Princeton. In the meantime, we will take you to the Hotel Martinet in Brooklyn, where Bobby Millette and his orchestra are offering a program of dance music.
We'd like to take a moment to thank one of our generous sponsors.
Leela, Leela.
Lakes International Language Academy is an IB tuition-free immersion school for kindergarten through 12th grade.
Pre-K options too. We love Leela's inclusive learning, accepting environment, and caring teachers.
Join Leela and broaden your perspective at myleela.org.
Leela, Leela.
And Royal Hoy. Escrivez-vous aujourd'hui.
Cynthia Balmy.
Enroll today.
Go to nocostconference.com for your free teleconference services for your businesses, support groups, charities, religious groups, or even just friends and family. That's nocostconference.com.
We take you now to Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Kent Clarkston again at the Wilmuth Farm, Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Professor Pearson and myself have made the 11 miles from Princeton in 10 minutes. Well, I hardly know where to begin. To paint for you a word picture of the strange scene before my eyes, like something out of a modern Arabian Nights. Well, I just got here. I haven't had the chance to look around yet. I guess that's it. Yes, that's the thing directly in front of me. Half buried in a vast pit. Must have struck with terrific force. The ground is covered with splinters of a tree it must have struck on its way down. What I can see of the object itself doesn't look very much like a meteor. At least not the meteors I've seen. It looks more like a huge cylinder. It has a diameter of... What would you say, Miss Fernandez?
What's that?
What would you say? What is the diameter?
About 30 yards.
There you have it, folks. About 30 yards. The metal on the sheath is... Well, I've never seen anything like it. It's sort of a yellowish white. Curious spectators are now pressing close to the object, in spite of the efforts of the police to keep them back. They're getting in front of my line of vision. Would you mind standing to one side, please?
One side, please. One side. Keep to one side.
While the policemen are pushing the crowd back, here's Mr. Wilmuth, owner of the farm here. He may have some interesting facts to add. Mr. Wilmuth, will you please tell our radio audience as much as you can remember of the unusual visitor that dropped into your backyard? Step closer, please. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Wilmuth.
Well, I was listening to the radio.
Closer and louder, please.
Pardon me?
Louder, please, and closer.
Yes, ma'am. While I was listening to the radio, kind of drowsing, that professor fellow was talking about Mars, so I was half dozing and half...
Yes, Mr. Wilmuth. Then what happened?
As I was saying, I was listening to the radio kind of halfway.
Yes, Mr. Wilmuth. And then you saw something?
Not burst up. I heard something.
And what did you hear?
A hissing sound, like this. Kind of like a 4th of July rocket.
Then what?
Turned my head out the window and would have sworn I was to sleep and dreaming.
Yes?
I see a kind of greenish streak, and then zingo, something smacked the ground and knocked me clear out of my chair.
Well, were you frightened, Mr. Wilmuth?
Well, I ain't quite sure, I reckon. I was kind of riled.
Thank you, Mr. Wilmuth. Thank you.
You want me to tell you some more?
No, that's quite all right. That's plenty. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard from Mr. Wilmuth, owner of the farm where this thing has fallen. I wish I could convey the atmosphere, the background of this fantastic scene. Hundreds of cars parked in the field back of us. Police are trying to rope off the roadway leading to the farm, but it's no use. They're breaking right through. Cars' headlights throw an enormous spot on the pit where the object's half buried. Some of the more daring souls are now venturing near the edge. Their silhouettes stand out against the metal sheen. One man wants to touch the thing. He's having an argument with the policeman. The policeman wins.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's something I haven't quite mentioned in all this excitement, but now it's becoming more distinct. Perhaps you've caught it already on your radio. Listen. Do you hear it? It's a curious humming sound that seems to be coming from the inside of the object. I'll move the microphone nearer. Now, we're not more than 25 feet away. Can you hear it now? Oh, Professor Pearson.
Yes, Mr. Clarkston?
Can you tell us the meaning of the scraping noise inside of the thing?
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface?
I see. Do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial, not found on this Earth. Friction with Earth's atmosphere usually tears holes in a meteorite, but this thing is smooth and, as you can see, of cylindrical shape.
Oh, just a minute. Something's happening. Ladies and gentlemen, this is terrific. The end of the thing is beginning to flake off. The top is beginning to rotate like a screw. The thing must be hollow.
Wow, look at the size of that thing.
Something's wrong.
She's moving. Keep back, it's red hot.
Whoa! Maybe there's men in there trying to escape.
It's red hot. They'll burn to cinder. Keep those idiots back.
She's off. Look at her, the top's
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most terrifying thing I have ever witnessed. Wait a minute. Someone's crawling out of the hollow top. Someone or something. I can see peering out of the black hole 2 luminous discs. Are they eyes? It might be a face. It might be a...
Good heavens.
What's that?
Something's wriggling out of the shadow like a gray snake.
Oh my
Now it's
gosh,
another
what
one.
is happening?
And another. They look like tentacles to me. There, I can see the thing's body. It's large as a bear, and it glistens like wet leather. But that face, ladies and gentlemen, it's indescribable. I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it. The eyes are black and gleam like a serpent. The mouth is V-shaped with saliva dripping from its rimless lips that seem to quiver and pulsate. The monster, whatever it is, can hardly move. It seems weighed down by gravity or something. The thing's raising up. The crowd falls back now. They've seen plenty. This is the most extraordinary experience. I can't find words. I'll pull this microphone with me as I talk. I'll have to stop the description until I can take a new position. Hold on, will you please? I'll be right back in a minute.
We are bringing you an eyewitness account of what's happening at the Wilmeth Farm at Grover's Mill, New Jersey. We now return you to Kent Clarkson and Carla Phillips at Grover's Mill.
Ladies and gentlemen, am I on? Ladies and gentlemen, here I am, back of the stone wall that adjoins Mr. Wilmer's garden. From here, I get a sweep of the whole scene. I'll give you every detail as long as I can talk, as long as I can see. More state police have arrived. They're drawing up a cordon in front of the pit. About 30 of them. No need to push the crowd back now. They are willing to keep their distance. The captain is conferring with someone. We can't quite see who. Oh yes, I believe it's Professor Pearson. Yes, it is. Now they've parted. The professor moves around to one side, studying the object, while the captain and 2 policemen advanced with something in their hands. I can see it now. It's a white handkerchief, tied to a pole, a flag of truce. If those creatures know what that means, what anything means, wait, something's happening. A hump-shaped thing is rising out of the pit. I can make out a small beam of light against the mirror. What's that? There's a jet of flame. It's springing from the mirror. It leaps right at the advancing men. It strikes them head on. Good Lord, they're turning into flame. Now the whole field's caught fire. The woods, the barns, the gas tanks, the automobiles. It's spreading everywhere. It's coming this way, about 20 yards to my right.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue the broadcast from Grover's Mill. Evidently, there's some difficulty with our field transmission. However, we will return to that point at the earliest opportunity. In the meantime, we have a late bulletin from San Diego, California. Professor Indelkoffer, speaking at a dinner of the California Astronomical Society, expressed the opinion that the explosion on Mars are undoubtedly nothing more than severe volcanic disturbances on the surface of the planet.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have just been handed a message that came in from Grover's Mill by telephone. Just a moment. At least 40 people, including 6 state troopers, lie dead in a field east of the village of Grover's Mill, their bodies burned or distorted beyond all possible recognition. The next voice you will hear will be that of Brigadier General Montgomery Smith, commander of the state militia at Trenton, New Jersey.
I have been requested by the governor of New Jersey to place the counties of Mercer and Middlesex as far west as Princeton and east to Jamesburg under martial law. No one will be permitted to enter this area except by a special pass issued by the state or military authorities. 4 companies of state militia are proceeding from Trenton to Grover's Mill and will aid the evacuation of homes within range of military operations. Thank you.
You have just been listening to General Montgomery Smith commanding the state militia at Trenton. In the meantime, further details of the catastrophe at Grover's Mill are coming in. The strange creatures, after unleashing their deadly assault, crawled back into their pit and made no attempt to prevent the efforts of the firemen to recover the bodies and extinguish the fire. Combined fire departments of Mercer County are fighting the flames, which menace the entire countryside. We have been unable to establish any contact with our mobile unit at Grover's Mill, but we hope to be able to return you there at the earliest possible moment. In the meantime, we take you... Just one moment, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have just been informed that we have finally established communication with an eyewitness of the tragedy. Professor Pearson has been located at a farmhouse near Grover's Mill, where she has established an emergency observation post. As a scientist, she will give you her explanation of the calamity. The next voice you will hear will be that of Professor Pearson, brought to you by Direct Wire. Professor Pearson?
Of the creatures in the rocket cylinder at Grover's Mill, I can give you no authoritative information, either as to their nature, their origin, or their purposes here on Earth. Of their destructive instrument, I might venture some conjectural explanation. For want of a better term, I shall refer to this mysterious weapon as a heat ray. It's all too evident that these creatures have scientific knowledge far in advance of our own. It's my guess that in some way they're able to generate an intense heat in a chamber of practically absolute non-conductivity. This intense heat they project in a parallel beam against any object they choose by means of a polished parabolic mirror of unknown composition, much as the mirror of a lighthouse projects a beam of light. That is my conjecture on the origin of the heat ray.
Thank you, Professor Pearson. Ladies and gentlemen, here is a late bulletin from Trenton. It is a brief statement informing us that the charred body of Carla Phillips has been identified in a Trenton hospital.
Now here's another bulletin from Washington, D.C. Office of the Director of National Red Cross reports 10 Red Cross emergency workers have been assigned to the headquarters of the state militia stationed outside of Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
Here's a bulletin from State Police. Princeton Junction. The fires at Grover's Mill and vicinity are now under control. Scouts report all quiet in the pit and no sign of life appearing from the mouth of the cylinder.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special statement from Mrs. Henrietta McDonald, Vice President in charge of operations.
We have received a request from the militia at Trenton to place at their disposal our entire broadcasting facilities. In view of the gravity in this situation and believing that the radio has responsibility to serve in the public interest at all times, we are turning over our facilities to the state militia at Trenton.
We take you now to the field headquarters of the state militia near Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
This is Captain Lansing of the Signal Corps, attached to the state militia now engaged in military operations in the vicinity of Grover's Mill. Situations arising from the reported presence of certain individuals of unidentified nature is now under complete control. The cylindrical object, which lies in a pit directly below our position, is surrounded on all sides by 8 battalions of infantry. Now here is Sergeant Barnes.
Without heavy field pieces, but adequately armed with rifles and machine guns, all cause for alarm, if such a cause ever existed, is now entirely unjustified. The things, whatever they are, do not even venture to poke their heads above the pit. I can see their hiding place plainly in the glare of the searchlights here. With all their reported resources, these creatures can scarcely stand up against heavy machine gun fire. Anyway, it's an interesting outing for the men. I can make out their khaki uniforms crossing back and forth in front of the lights. It's almost like a real war. There appears to be some slight smoke in the woods bordering the Millstone River. Probably fire started by campers. We ought to see some action soon. One of the companies is deploying on the left flank. A quick thrust and it will all be over. Now wait a minute. I see something on the top of the cylinder.
No, it's nothing but a shadow.
Now the troops are on the edge of the Wilmouth farm. 7,000 armed men closing in on an old metal tube.
Wait, that wasn't a shadow. It's something moving, solid metal.
Kind of shield-like affair rising up out of the cylinder.
It's going higher and higher.
Why, it's standing on legs. Actually rearing up on some sort of metal framework. Now it's reaching above the trees and searchlights are on it.
Hold on.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from the planet Mars. The battle which took place tonight at Grover's Mill has ended in one of the most startling defeats ever suffered by any army in modern times. 7,000 men armed with rifles and machine guns pitted against a single fighting machine of the invaders from Mars. 120 known survivors, the rest strewn over the battle area from Grover's Mill to Plainsboro, crushed and trampled to death under the metal feet of the monster or burned to cinders by its heat ray. The monster is now in control of the middle section of New Jersey and has effectively cut the state through its center.
National reports indicate communication lines are down from Phoenixville to the Atlantic Ocean. Railroad tracks are torn from service from New York to Philadelphia, discontinued except routing some of the trains through Allentown and Phoenixville. Highways to the north, south, and west are clogged with frantic human traffic. Police and Army reserves are unable to control the mad flight. By morning, the fugitives will have swelled Philadelphia, Camden, and Trenton, is estimated to twice their normal population. At this time, martial law prevails throughout New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania. We take you now to Washington for a special broadcast on the national emergency. The Secretary of the Interior.
Citizens of the nation, I shall not try to conceal the gravity of the situation that confronts the country, nor the concern of your government in protecting the lives and property of its people. However, I wish to impress upon you, private citizens and public officials, all of you, the urgent need of calm and resourceful action. Fortunately, this formidable enemy is still confined to a comparatively small area. We may place our faith in the military forces to keep them there. In the meantime, placing our faith in God, we must continue the performance of our duties, each and every one of us, so that we may confront this destructive adversary with a nation united, courageous, and consecrated to the preservation of human supremacy on this earth. I thank you.
You have just heard the Secretary of the Interior speaking from Washington. Bulletins too numerous to read are piling up in the studio here. We are informed the central portion of New Jersey is blacked out from radio communications due to the effect of the heat ray upon power lines and electrical equipment.
Here's a special bulletin from New York. Cables received from English, French, German scientific bodies offering assistance. Astronomers report continued gas outbursts at regular intervals on the planet Mars. Majority voice opinion that enemy will be reinforced by additional rocket machines. Attempts made to locate Professor Pearson of Princeton, who has observed Martians at close range. It is feared she was lost in the recent battle.
This just in from Langham Field, Virginia. Scouting planes report 3 Martian machines visible above treetops moving north towards Somerville with a population fleeing ahead of them. Heat ray not in use. Although advancing the express train speed, invaders pick their way carefully. They seem to be making a conscious effort to avoid destruction of cities and countryside. However, they stop to uproot power lines, bridges, and railroad tracks. Their apparent objective is to crush the resistance, paralyze communication, and disorganize human society.
Here is a bulletin from Basking Ridge, New Jersey. Coon hunters have stumbled on a second cylinder similar to the first embedded in the Great Swamp 20 miles south of Morristown. Army field pieces are proceeding from Newark to blow up the second invading unit before the cylinder can be opened and the fighting machine rigged. They are taking up position in the foothills of the Watchung Mountains.
Another bulletin from Langham Field, Virginia. Scouting planes report enemy machines, now 3 in number, increasing speed northward, kicking over houses and trees in their evident haste to form a conjunction with their allies south of Morristown. Machines also sighted by telephone operator east of Middlesex within 10 miles of Plainfield. Here's a bulletin from Winston Field, Long Island. Fleet of Army bombers carrying heavy explosives flying north in pursuit of the enemy. Scouting planes act as guides. They keep speeding enemy in sight.
Just a moment, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we've run special wires to the artillery line in the adjacent villages to give you direct reports in the zone of the advancing enemy. First, we take you to the battery of the 22nd Field Artillery, located in the Watchung Mountains.
Range, 32 meters. 32 meters! Projection, 39 degrees. 39 degrees! Fire!
140 yards to the right, sir.
Shift range, 31 meters. 31 meters! Projection, 37 degrees. 37 degrees! Fire!
A hit, sir. We got the tripod of one of them. They've stopped. The others are trying to repair it.
Quick, get the range. Shift, 30 meters. 30 meters! Projection, 27 degrees. 27 degrees! Fire!
Can't see the Shetland, sir. They're letting off a smoke.
What is it?
A black smoke, sir. Moving this way. Lying close to the ground. It's moving fast.
Put on gas masks. Get ready to fire. Shift, 24 meters.
24 meters!
Projection, 24 degrees.
24 degrees!
Fire!
Still can't see, sir. The smoke's coming nearer.
Get the range.
23 meters.
23 meters.
23 meters. Projection, 22 degrees.
22 degrees. Army bombing plane V-843 off Bayonne, New Jersey. Lieutenant Vo, commanding 8 bombers, reporting to Commander Fairfax, Langham Field. This is Vo, reporting to Commander Fairfax, Langham Field. Enemy tripod machines now in sight. Reinforced by 3 machines from the Morristown cylinder. 6 altogether. 1 machine's already crippled. Believed hit by a shell from an army gun in the Watchung Mountains. Guns now appear silent. A heavy black fog hanging close to the earth. Of extreme density, nature unknown. No sign of the heat ray. Enemy now turns east, crossing Pasiac River into the Jersey marshes. Another straddles the Pulaski Skyway. Evident objective is New York City. They're pushing down a high-tension power station. Machines are close together now, and we're ready to attack. Planes circling, ready to strike. 1,000 yards will be over the first. 800, 600, 400, 200. There they go. The giant arm raised. Green flash! This brain is aflame! 2,000 feet. Engines are given out. No chance to release the bombs. Only one thing left. Drop on him, plane and all. We're diving on the first one. Now the engine's gone. 800?
This is Bayonne, New Jersey, calling Langham Field. This is Bayonne, New Jersey, calling Langham Field. Come in, please.
This is Langham Field, go ahead.
8 Army bombers in engagement with enemy tripod machines over Jersey Flats. Engines incapacitated by heat ray. All crashed. One enemy machine destroyed. Enemy now discharging heavy black smoke in direction of. This is Newark, New Jersey. This is Newark, New Jersey. Warning. Poisonous black smokes pouring in from Jersey marshes. Breaches South Street. Gas masks, useless. Urge population to move into open spaces. Automobiles, use routes 7, 23, 24. Avoid congested areas. Smoke now spreading over Raymond Boulevard. 2x2l colon c cube. 2x2l colon c cube. 2x2l colon 8x3r. Come in, please.
This is 8x3r coming back at 2x2l.
How's reception? How's reception? Kate, please. Where are you, 8x3r? What's the matter? Where are you?
I'm speaking from the roof of the Broadcasting Building, New York City. The bells you hear are ringing to warn the people to evacuate the city as the Martians approach. Estimated in the last 2 hours, 3 million people have moved out along the roads to the north. Hutchinson River Parkway still kept open for motor traffic. Avoid the bridges to Long Island, hopelessly jammed. All communication with Jersey Shore closed 10 minutes ago. No more defenses. Our army wiped out. Artillery, Air Force, everything wiped out. This may be the last broadcast, but we'll stay here till the end. People are holding service below us in the cathedral. Now I look down the harbor. All manner of boats overloaded with fleeing population, pulling out from docks.
Streets are all jammed. Noise and crowd like New Year's Eve in city. Wait a minute. Enemy now inside above the Palisades. Five great machines. First one is crossing river. I can see it from here. Wading the Hudson like a man wading through a brook.
A bulletin's been handed to me. Martian cylinders are falling over the country. One outside Buffalo, one in Chicago, St. Louis. They seem to be timed and spaced. Now the first machine reaches the shore. He stands, watching, looking over the city. His steel, cowlish head is now even with the skyscrapers. He waits for the others. They rise like a line of new towers on the city's west side. Now they're lifting their metal hands. This is the end now. Smoke comes out. Black smoke drifting over the city.
People in the streets see it now. They're running towards the East River, thousands of them dropping in like rats. Now the smoke's spreading faster. It's reached Times Square, people trying to run away from it, but it's no use. They're falling like flies. Now the smoke's crossing 6th Avenue, 5th Avenue, 100 yards away. It's 50 feet.
2x2l colon CQ. 2x2l colon CQ. 2x2l colon CQ. New York, is there anyone on the air? Is there anyone on the air? Is there anyone? 2x2l.
You are listening to the Ancona Title Radio Show and Children's Performing Arts Radio Players presentation of Orson Welles' 1938 original dramatization of The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. The performance will continue after a brief intermission.
Dependable and helpful, Ancona Title.
Welcome back to the Ancona Title Radio Show and Children's Performing Arts Radio Players, the second act made possible by Jesse Johnson, State Farm Insurance.
We'd now like to take a moment to thank one of our generous sponsors.
Jesse Johnson with State Farm Insurance is Forest Lake's #1 auto and home insurer.
Committed to moving the community forward, Jesse personally supports local programs just like this one. And since he lives in Forest Lake, he's not like a good neighbor. Jesse Johnson is a good neighbor.
I know Jesse, and he's a nice guy.
He's really our neighbor. Jesse is there.
Find Jesse at forestlakeareainsurance.com.
And by the Hollingstead family, the Lesh family, Shirley and George Kimball, and Lucy, Pearl, and Sage Meehee.
As I set down these notes on paper, I'm obsessed by the thought that we may be the last 2 living people on Earth. I have been hiding in this empty house near Grover's Mill, a small island of daylight cut off by the black smoke from the rest of the world. All that happened before the arrival of these monstrous creatures in the world now seems part of another life. A life that has no continuity with the present, furtive existence of the lonely derelict who pencils these words in the back of some astronomical notes bearing the signature of Dorothy Pearson. I look down at my blackened hands, my torn shoes, my tattered clothes, and I try to connect them with the professor who lives at Princeton and who on the night of October 30th glimpsed through her telescope an orange splash of light on a distant planet.
My colleagues, my students, my books, my observatory, my world. Where are they? Did they ever exist? Am I Dorothy Pearson? What day is it? Do days exist without calendars? Does time pass when there are no human hands left to wind the clocks? In writing down my daily life, I shall preserve human history between the dark covers of this little book that was meant to record the movements of stars. But to write, I must live, and to live, I must eat. I find mouldy bread in the kitchen and an orange not too spoiled to swallow. I keep watch at the window, and from time to time I catch sight of a Martian above the black smoke. The smoke still holds the house in its black coil. But at length there is a hissing sound, and suddenly I see a Martian mounted on his machine, spraying the air with a jet of steam as if to dissipate the smoke. I watch in a corner as his huge metal legs nearly brush against the house. Exhausted by terror, I fall asleep. It's morning.
Morning! Sun streams in the window. The black cloud of gas has lifted, and the scorched meadows to the north look as though a black snowstorm has passed over them. I venture from the house. I make my way to a road. No traffic. Here and there a wrecked car, baggage overturned, a blackened skeleton. I push on north. For some reason I feel safer trailing the monsters than running away from them. And I keep a careful watch. I have seen the Martians feed. Should one of their machines appear over the tops of trees, I am ready to fling myself flat on the earth. I come to a chestnut tree. October chestnuts are ripe. I fill my pockets. I must keep alive. 2 days I wander in a vague northerly direction through a desolate world. Finally, I notice a living creature. A small red squirrel in a beech tree. I stare at him and wonder. He stares back at me. I believe at that moment the animal and I shared the same emotion. The joy of finding another living being. I push on north. I find dead cows in a brackish field, beyond the charred ruins of a dairy. The silo remains standing guard over the wasteland like a lighthouse deserted by the sea. Astride the silo perches a weathercock. The arrow points north.
The next day I came to a city vaguely familiar in its contours, yet its buildings strangely dwarfed and levelled off, as if a giant hand sliced off its highest towers with a capricious sweep of his hand. I reached the outskirts. I found Newark, undemolished but humbled by some whim of the advancing Martians. Presently, with an odd feeling of being watched, I caught sight of something crouching in a doorway. I made a step towards it, and it rose up and became a man. No, men. One armed with a large knife.
Stop! Where'd you come from?
I come from many places. A long time ago from Princeton.
Princeton, huh? That's near Grover's Mill.
Yes.
Grover's Mill. There's no food here. This is my country, all this end of town down to the river. There's only food for us two. Which way are you going?
I don't know. I guess I'm looking for people.
What was that? Did you hear something just then?
Only a bird. A live bird.
You get to know that birds have shadows these days. Say, we're out in the open here. Crawl in this doorway and talk.
Have you seen any Martians?
Nah, they've gone over to New York. At night the sky is alive with their lights, just as if people were still living in it. By daylight you can't see them. 5 days ago, a couple of them carried something big across the flats from the airport. I believe they're learning to fly.
Fly?
Yeah, fly.
Then it's all over for humanity. Strangers, there's still you and I. The four of us left.
They got themselves in solid. They wrecked the greatest country in the world. Those green stars are probably falling somewhere every night. They only lost one machine. There isn't anything to do. We're done. We're licked.
Where were you? You were in a uniform.
Yeah, what's left of it. I was in the militia, National Guard.
That's good. Wasn't any war any more than there's war between men and ants.
And we're eatable ants. I found that out. What will they do with us?
I've thought it all out. Right now we're caught as we're wanted. The Martian only has to go a few miles to get a crowd on the run, but they won't keep doing that. They'll begin catching us systematic-like. Keeping the best and strong of us in cages and things. They haven't begun on us yet.
Not begun? Not begun. All that's happened so far is because we don't have sense enough to keep quiet. Bothering with guns and such stuff, losing our heads and rushing off in crowds. Now, instead of running around blind, we've got to fix ourselves up. Fix ourselves up according to the way things are now. Cities, nations, civilization, progress. Done.
But if that's so, what is there to live for?
Well, there won't be any more concerts for 1,000,000 years or so, and no nice little dinners at restaurants. If it's amusement you're after, I guess the game's up.
And what is there left?
Life. That's what. I want to live. Yeah, and so do you. We're not going to be exterminated. I don't mean to be caught either and tamed and fattened and bred like an ox.
What are you going to do?
I'm going on, right under their feet. I got a plan. We men as men are finished. We don't know enough. We gotta learn plenty before we got a chance. And we've gotta live and keep free while we learn, see? I've thought it all out, see?
Tell me the rest.
Well, it isn't all of us that were made for wild beasts, and that's what it's gotta be. That's why I watched you. All these little office workers that used to live in these houses, they'd be no good. They haven't any stuff to them. They just used to run off to work. I've seen hundreds of them, running wild to catch their commuter train in the morning for fear they'd get canned if they didn't, running back at night afraid they won't be in time for dinner. Lives insured and a little invested in case of accidents. And on Sundays, worried about the hereafter. The Martians would be a godsend for these guys. Nice roomy cages, good food, careful breeding. No worries. After a week or so chasing about the fields on empty stomachs, they'll come and be glad to be caught.
You've thought it all out, haven't you?
You bet I have. And that isn't all. These Martians will make pets of some of them, train them to do tricks, and who knows, get sentimental over the boy who grew up and had to be killed. And some, maybe they'll train to hunt us.
No. That's impossible. No human being...
Yes, they will. There's men who do it gladly. If one of them ever comes after me, why?
In the meantime, you and I and others like us, where are we to live when the Martians own the Earth?
I've got it all figured out. We'll live underground. I've been thinking about the sewers. Under New York, there are miles and miles of them. The main ones are big enough to hold anybody. Then there's cellars, vaults, underground storerooms, railway tunnels, subways. You begin to see, huh? And we'll get a bunch of strong men together. No weak ones. That rubbish out.
And you meant me to go?
Well, I gave you a chance, didn't I?
We won't quarrel about that. Go on.
And we've got to make safe places for us to stay in, see? And get all the books we can. Science books. That's where men like you come in, see? We'll raid the museums. We'll even spy on the Martians. It may not be so much we have to learn before. Just imagine this. 4 or 5 of their own fighting machines suddenly start off. Heat rays right and left, and not a Martian in them. Not a Martian, but men. Men who have learned the way how. It may even be in our time. Gee, imagine having one of them lovely things with its heat ray wide and free. We'd turn it on Martians, we'd turn it on men. We'd bring everybody down to their knees.
That's your plan? You, me, and a few more of us. We'd own the world.
I see.
Say, what's the matter? Where are you going?
Not to your world. Goodbye, strangers. After parting with the artillerymen, I came at last to the Holland Tunnel. I entered that silent tube, anxious to know the fate of the great city on the other side of the Hudson. Cautiously, I came out of the tunnel and made my way up Canal Street. I reached 14th Street, and there again were black powder and several bodies, and an evil, ominous smell from the gratings of the cellars of some of the houses. I wandered up through the 30s and 40s. I stood alone on Times Square. I caught sight of a lean dog running down 7th Avenue, with a piece of dark brown meat in its jaws, and a pack of starving mongrels at its heels. He made a wide circle around me, as though he feared I might prove a fresh competitor. I walked up Broadway in the direction of that strange powder, past silent shop windows, displaying their mute wares to empty sidewalks, past the Capitol Theatre, silent and dark, past a shooting gallery where a row of empty guns faced an arrested line of wooden ducks. Near Columbus Circle, I noticed models of 1939 motor cars in showrooms facing empty streets. And from over the top of the General Motors building, I watched a flock of black birds circling in the sky. I hurried on. Suddenly, I caught sight of the hood of a Martian machine, standing somewhere in Central Park, gleaming in the late afternoon sun.
An insane idea! I rushed recklessly across Columbus Circle and into the park. I climbed a small hill above the pond of 60th Street. From there, I could see, standing in a silent row along the mall, 19 of those great metal titans. Their cowls empty. Their great steel arms hanging listlessly by their sides. I looked in vain for the monsters that inhabit those machines. Suddenly, my eyes were attracted to the immense flock of black birds that hovered directly below me. They circled to the ground, and there, before my eyes, stark and silent, lay the Martians, with hungry birds pecking and tearing brown shreds of flesh from their dead bodies. Later, when their bodies were examined in the laboratories, it was found that they were killed by the putrefactive and disease bacteria against which their systems were unprepared. Slain, after all men's defenses had failed, by the humblest thing that God in his wisdom put upon this earth. Before the cylinder fell, there was a general persuasion that through all the deep of space, no life existed beyond the petty surface of our minute sphere. Now we see further. Dim and wonderful is the vision I have conjured up in my mind, of life spreading slowly from the little seedbed of the solar system throughout the inanimate vastness of sidereal space. But that is a remote dream. It may be that the destruction of the Martians is only a reprieve. To them, and not to us, is the future ordained, perhaps.
Strange it now seems to sit in my peaceful study at Princeton, writing down the last chapter of this record begun at a deserted farm in Grover's Mill. Strange to see from my window the university spires dim and blue through an April haze. Strange to watch children playing in the streets. Strange to see young people strolling on the green, where the new spring grass heals the last black scars of a bruised earth. Strange to watch the sightseers enter the museum, where disassembled parts of a Martian machine are kept on public view. Strange when I recall the time when I first saw it, bright and clean-cut, hard, silent, under the dawn of that last great day.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now out of character and can assure you that War of the Worlds has no further significance than the holiday offering it was intended to be. The CPA radio player's version of dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush saying, boo.
Starting now, we couldn't soap all your windows and steal all your garden gates by tomorrow night. So we did the next best thing. We annihilated the world before your very ears and utterly destroyed the great city of New York. You'll be relieved, I hope, to learn that we didn't mean it, and all institutions are still open for business. So goodbye, everybody, and remember the terrible lesson you learned tonight. That grinning, glowing, globular invader of your living room is an inhabitant of the pumpkin patch. And if your doorbell rings and no one was there, that was no Martian. It's Halloween.
Thank you for listening to the On Kona Title radio show and Children's Performing Arts Radio Players presentation of Orson Welles' 1938 original dramatization of The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. We would like to thank all of our generous sponsors and wish all of you, our listening audience, a good night.